everybody. I'm going to be talking to you about how a table can change a life. I'm going to be telling a story about hope, change, and progression, and I'm going to tell it through the perspective of two tables. In between telling you about the experience of two inanimate objects, I'm going to talk about how a group of community voluntary services, or NGOs, have come together with the Department of Justice and have formulated a new pathway from prison into the community that focuses on employment. So let's meet our first table. This guy here was made down in Limerick, and he was made in PALS, which is a training centre that works with people coming out of prison. And the table was quite hard to make. There's quite a lot of pieces there. If you made that table, then you would get a level 4 qualification in carpentry. John made this one, and he made it quite well, and he got a certificate, and he was really, really proud. And it was a great moment in his life. And even though that table didn't fit in his hallway and didn't fit in his lounge, because it was a little bit big for the hallway and it was kind of a little bit small for the lounge, even though it had pride of place in his home in Moyross in Limerick because it meant so much. It was the pinnacle of his journey so far. He'd achieved this really great thing, this making of the table. So that was a great story, but unfortunately, it gets a bit worse from here. And what the table experienced, and the next part of its journey, is what many people have experienced who have worked with people coming out of prison. The table saw John leave the training program where he felt very at home, he was very supported, and he had really been able to address his own development psychologically, spiritually, and his skills, and he was in a great place. He came back home and he started to apply for jobs, but employers were really, really nervous about John's experience. They didn't quite see a match between his skill set and the world of employment. John was sending out all of these applications. He was getting very, very few calls back, and he became increasingly despondent. And if you had asked John at that time, well, how do you feel, John? He would have used words like useless and hopeless. And that's a story that's all too familiar. Because of the familiarity of that terrible story, a whole lot of NGOs and community and voluntary services have come together with the backing of the Department of Justice, and we have something very good here in Ireland. This is a social enterprise strategy from the Department of Justice being led by Prison and Probation. And it provides an amazing scaffolding for looking at social enterprise, for looking at the model or the approach that can fix the problem that John experienced. And this is a world first, which is great, is that no other country in the world has a social enterprise strategy from a justice perspective. So this is really, really important. To make change, we all know we need a couple of things. We need a vision at a high level, and we need grassroots movement and change. And luckily at the moment, at this time in Ireland, we have both of those things. This is, that's me obviously, and my colleague Joan. And we make good. And we're a big part of this process because we've brought together a manufacturing network of all of these training providers to try and address this problem and try and create social enterprises. Here's our table. Here's our table. What we do with the partners in these community and voluntary not-for-profit agencies who were trying to make this transition, and they were training organisations, and they're trying to become businesses, social enterprise. What we do is we do all the things that are new to them, or a lot of the things that are new to them, because they're really good at making things, they're really good at supporting the guys, they're really good at training, but there's this whole range of new skills you need to start a business, and those are really challenging skills. You need to be able to find designers, you need to be able to prototype, you need to be able to do health and safety testing, you need to be able to decide what's going to be good in the marketplace, then you need to get it made, and then once you've got that, you need to get it to the market. So you need to be able to engage with photographers and websites and the press. Occasionally you even need to do a TEDx presentation because you need to get your message out there, and that takes enormous amounts of skill and energy. And these guys, these training services, there's no way we're saying that they can be expected to develop all of those skills. So we make good exist to help all of those training institutes make that big leap because they're taking a risk. They're not required to do this, they don't need to do it. The reason that they're doing it is because they see that we need something else. We need something post-training. We need to make sure that people like John aren't sitting at home, becoming less and less engaged with their family and their friends and themselves, becoming hopeless and useless, because there's something there for them after training. So here's the table that got made. This is a picture of John Glynn, who designed the table. We're working with 9 designers who all come on board and want to be part of the story. The reason that they want to do it is because it's meaningful, it's kind of cool, and it also helps them contribute to Irish design, which is really, really important. There aren't that many opportunities, surprisingly, for Irish designers to really do Irish design made in Ireland for an Irish and international audience. And here's where the table got made. So it got made in Limerick, in the same venue as our first table, but in a fundamentally different way. PALS, we just met those before, they've developed Cordia Enterprises, and Cordia is a social enterprise. So the guys working to make the tables now are being paid. And this is really, really important. And you can see Tony in the middle there. Tony is the workshop manager, and he's responsible for making sure that those tables come in at the right quality and the right way. This is Danny. We're going to meet Danny over the next little while. I'm going to tell you the story about Danny and Danny's table, because they become synonymous over this next little journey. And I said to Danny, well, what's it like, to make these tables? And he said, well, it's really, really hard, because Tony's really tough. And we love Tony for that, because we've got to sell these tables. They need to be perfect. And so Tony just kept sitting in the back until we got these perfect tables. And the guys said, actually, that was quite good. And they also said the reason why we put such energy into these is because they're selling for €195. And they're a bit like, what? But we know that's a really good value table because they're beautifully made, and the guys worked to that standard. They did an amazing job. The other thing they said is we work so hard because this was real work, and that has meaning. The guys that got to work on Cordia were the ones who were committed, who really showed that they wanted to go that next step, and they were going to put in the hard work, because it is hard work, to turn up no matter what else was going on, and to commit in the way that they needed to make that work, to be a good employee. If this had been around 5 years earlier, then John could have been on here, and he would have had a different story. This is Danny and David, and they're with Pascal Donoghue, who's the Minister of Finance in Ireland at the moment. And they all spoke at the launch. You can see the table there in the background, and they all talked a little bit about it. The minister talked about how the government in Ireland is in the business of creating jobs. But he said maybe not all jobs are equal. He said we absolutely need these big tech jobs that return to the exchequer, that help grow an economy. But maybe some jobs, the jobs that take someone from hopelessness to hope, take someone from being on the unemployment benefit into paying taxes, take people from a place of dislocation into a place of social inclusion, maybe these jobs, just maybe, they are worth more than other jobs. And I happen to agree. He talked about social enterprise being a prime way in which Ireland can deliver prosperity and equality at the same time. Luckily for the minister, I agree with it as well. The guys had to talk alongside the minister, and of course that's pretty intimidating and shows what a great journey they'd been on. So I was talking to them beforehand and kind of saying, oh, what are you going to say and how's it going? One thing really stuck out for me. I said, well, so what does it mean? What does it mean to be employed in this way? The answer was everything. But of course, the media want a bit more than that, so I said, we're going to have to say more than that. And so they did. They said, well, unpack everything. And they said, well, it's about hope. It's about hope for my future. It's about feeling a sense of value. And from value, I have pride for the first time. And one of them said, it's the first time my family has been proud of me. These were huge changes. The tables had a big journey. The guys had to come up again to Dublin, because it's quite a demanding table, actually, and there was a lot of media attention because of the story that it represents. The guys were on RTE nationwide, which I have since learned means that you've arrived. They were also on the 6 o'clock news. And there's a little teaser before the news, and they kind of say, tonight's headlines: Brexit, the latest, riots in Paris, and a new social enterprise providing jobs for people out of prison. So our table had become very well known, but we were starting to worry about the company it was keeping. We were also in the newspapers. People loved the story. And just last month, Shopify, who are our commercial partner, they're going to be hosting our website, which is going to be launched in a couple of weeks, www.wemakegood.ie. And they sent a whole big film crew, 7, 8 people. They spent a day with us. They spent a day down with the guys watching the workshop, because it's not just the table they're making a whole range of products. And the reason that they said they wanted to make the documentary about this is because the story has meaning, because it's commerce and it's social justice and it's put together, and that's important and that's meaningful. That little table hasn't finished its journey. That little table is helping us win more contracts. We're negotiating with a big health provider for a big business-to-business contract at the moment. We're talking to Rothko Accenture. They're a creative agency. And for them, we're not making a little table. We're making a huge, big, beautiful, very special copper table. They liked it because we understood their brief, because the design was great. But why they said they really, really wanted this is because they wanted the story. They wanted to be part of that story about overcoming adversity, about forgiveness for ourselves, for others, about doing things that we sometimes don't think are possible, but if we really try, then we can make something of them. And that's a story about others. It's a story about what other people can achieve. But in that story, we can see our own story as well, and that maybe we can overcome adversity, forgive, and be part of something else. And it's not just big creative companies that understand the story or want to be part of it. In the shop, and you can see some of our products there, we had 45 products in the shop, and half of them were developed very specially for this. A lot were made in the criminal justice sector, but a lot were made also by some other social enterprises working with travellers or refugees, people with disabilities. And when people came into the shop, again and again, they told the same story, which was, wow, this is what I've been looking for. I'm sick of just buying things that don't mean anything. This means something to me. They said they wanted something in their home that represented not just their aesthetics and what they liked, but that represented their values, represented what they wanted their world to be. Here's Deirdre. Deirdre bought some tables. And Deirdre lives just 3 miles from here, and I wanted to talk to someone who was living with the products. And I said, well, what does it mean to have the tables in the house? And Deirdre said, well, they're strong and they're reliable and they're well made and they're beautiful. He said, but much more importantly than that, these tables speak to our family values about inclusion, about hope, and about giving people second chances. She said, everybody deserves a chance to do good. So looking at them reminds the family of who they are. It's really important to us. These products, because there's thousands of them in homes, and they were all in the newspapers, and every time someone looks at it or thinks about it or buys it or gives one as a gift, which I suggest everybody does, they are a reminder about what we want our society to be. They're a reminder about what people can do if they're given a chance. We don't know that they're yet. So what's next for us is we are designing a range of furnishings, of homewares. We have amazing designers and collaborators. We're still learning. We're learning a lot because this is relatively new to Ireland. And what we're learning is about our business model and what we need to do. We have learnt, most definitely, that real work creates change. Real work has meaning. We've also learned about who we are, because we're two things. On one hand, we are working from the model, the providers are working from the model of education, rehabilitation, trauma-informed care. And then on the other hand, we're in the cut and thrust world of business, and we need to be in both these places. We also need to work with everybody to understand that the funding models and how the business model works. Because we do need state funding. We need it at the provider level. We need it at our level, the support level. But we need to earn a lot of our income from trade because we need real work. We need real meaning. And we need to fulfill that promise that Minister Donoghue talked about, is that we need to contribute as social enterprises to society in these multiple ways. So we're learning about that, and we want to be talking to people about engaging with us. We've got big ambitions. We want to sell to you all as customers. We want to engage with you as funders and collaborators, and we want to sell some more stuff. We've got our eyes on a few tables that we think we can replace. So we hope that you'll spread the word, and we hope you'll be part of our journey.